Our scripture reading today is from Mark 10, verses 46 to 52. They came to Jericho as he and his disciples and a large crowd were leaving Jericho. Bartimaeus, son of Timaeus, a blind beggar, was sitting by the roadside. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout out and say, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." Many sternly ordered him to be quiet, but he cried even more loudly, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stood still and said, "Call him here." And they called the blind man, saying to him, "Take heart, get up, he is calling you." So throwing off his cloak, he sprang up and came to Jesus. Then Jesus said to him, "What do you want me to do for you?" The blind man said to him, "My teacher, let me see again." And Jesus said to him, "Go, your faith has made you well." Immediately he regained his sight and followed him on the way. May God bless to our understanding this reading from his Holy Scripture.
Well, it was nice of that highly revving vehicle to wait till after you finished to go by. The squeaky wheel, they say, is always the one that gets the grease. The crying baby is the one that gets up. The man yelling on the road is the one who gets noticed. The story of Bartimaeus is intriguing because every time I read it, I wonder, what if Bartimaeus was shy? Now living your entire life as a blind man, forced to live on the largesse of others, and being shy doesn't work well anyway. You don't survive. But what if Bartimaeus listened when those first people said, "You're making a scene, be quiet"? Would he have been healed? If Bartimaeus hadn't been willing to make a fuss, to make a scene, to make himself known, to make his needs known, if he hadn't been willing to be the squeaky wheel that day in Jericho, would Jesus even have known he was there? Squeaky wheels sometimes get the grease they need. Asking for help is a bit of a conundrum for many. There are many people who find it really hard to ask for help. Really hard to say, oh, I just can't do this by myself. Some of you are probably hearing me speak right now. And then there's times when we're like that crowd, the voices in the crowd say, you're making a fuss. We don't want to hear from you right now. Be quiet. Because the text is fairly clear that that's what happens to Bartimaeus. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout out and say, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Many sternly ordered him to be quiet. It's not proper to make a fuss. It's not proper to draw attention to yourself. It's not proper to be the squeaky wheel. Asking for help is a challenge. Being around the people who are asking for help can be a challenging thing. Because as much as we know that the squeaky wheel gets the grease or the crying baby gets picked up, it sometimes makes us uncomfortable. And sometimes the squeaky wheel doesn't get the grease. Sometimes the crying baby is told, you need to be by yourself for a while. And sometimes that's the right thing to do. Maybe a better example for the baby is the smelly baby often gets, because nobody chooses not to change the smelly baby. And sometimes the people yelling by the roadside are ignored. Sometimes the people who ask for help don't get the help they ask for. They might get other help, but they don't get what they ask for. So what does this text, this story, which is, it's both a healing story and a discipleship story. Because what does Bartimaeus do once he has his sight? He follows Jesus on the way, and the next place Jesus is going, as Mark has said his gospel, is Jerusalem. This is the end section of Mark, and it leads us into the end section of Mark. So it's a discipleship. Because sometimes when we're the squeaky wheel, then we've finally gotten greased. When we've been asking for help so long, and we finally found it. The only thing we can do is jump up and celebrate and follow the ones, support the ones, and go with the ones who helped us. Where are we in the story of Bartimaeus? I don't think we're the same. I think sometimes we are the ones who recognize we need help and ask for it. And the interesting thing about Bartimaeus is he doesn't just ask, and probably life living as a beggar, has trained this. He doesn't ask once. Some of us, when we finally get up the courage to ask, we ask once, and if no one responds, we don't ask again. Or we don't ask again for a long, long time. Bartimaeus keeps asking, and keeps asking, and keeps asking. Sometimes we're Bartimaeus, help. Sometimes we recognize that we can only get the help we need if we make a big fuss. Sometimes, I often wonder how many other people, as Jesus is surrounded by a crowd, does Jesus not notice? I know that's what we like to think about Jesus. But are there others out there, either on the streets of Jericho or on the streets of Grand Prairie, who deep down know they need help, but just can't ask for it? Are they the unspoken parts of our story? Maybe sometimes we're there. And maybe sometimes we're those voices in the crowd who turn to Bartimaeus and say, be quiet. There are more important things happening right now. There's more important people around. Be quiet. I suspect at various times in our life we fit into any or all of those three slots. And sometimes we're like the rest of the crowd. Because it doesn't say the whole crowd said, be quiet. It said some in the crowd said, be quiet. So maybe we're like the rest of the crowd, waiting, wondering, what's going to happen now? What's Jesus going to do now? Asking for help, being around those who ask for help, being the squeaky wheel or putting up with the squeaky wheel is challenging. I think one of the things that I get out of the story of Bartimaeus is that it's okay to ask. It's okay to make the fuss. It's okay to let other people make the fuss. We don't have to tell them to be quiet. We shouldn't tell them to be quiet. We should help them find the help. Other healing stories in the Gospels, somebody, rather than just push them off to the side, well, there's one story where his friends cut a hole in the ceiling so that their friend can get to Jesus. I often wondered what the house owner of that story really thought. Their choice. Asking for help is part of life. Being around those who ask for help is a part of life. The gospel, the social imperative of following Christ is that we remember it's okay. Remember that we can't do it by ourselves. Remember that our neighbors can't do it by themselves. And that sometimes we have to pay attention to the squeaky wheel, to the smelly baby, to the man, to the woman, to the individual lying by the roadside. May God help us when we need to be squeaky wheels. May God help us as we deal with the squeaky wheels we meet in our lives. Amen.